For the fly front zipper, there's a couple of preparatory steps that we have to do. Whoops. Couple of preparatory steps that we have to do at the serger. You've got these pattern pieces that are available online and on Canvas. So cut those out. I've got my right side of this pattern piece here, and I am going to begin by serging around this edge. You might have to do this multiple times. Some of you might have to just cut out a couple of them because you cannot cut any of this corner off. No cutting off fabric, none. You've got to be precise on this. So go and figure out how to do edges on the serger, because we cannot have any of that cut off. So go slow. If I were doing this on a garment, this piece I would have interfaced the wrong side of it. So I would have interfaced this piece first. But there you have it. It's got to look nice and crisp. No cutting off any edges on that. I've also got, you've got two 4x8 pieces of fabric as well. Serge one edge. One of those long edges to finish it off. And then you also have this piece right here. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold this. Here I've got the right side marked. You're going to fold it wrong sides together, and you will notice that there is a slight angle on one side. You're going to serge that closed. Don't cut anything off. No trimming off anything. Once you have serged that bottom part, you're also going to serge this edge as well, this long edge. Once you've done all of that serging, you're ready to take this over to your straight stitch. So right now I'm going to show you how to sew the fly front zipper. I'm just going to say I know of at least 4 different methods off the top of my head for sewing a fly front zipper. So this is one method. So if you ever hear in the future, this is how you sew a fly front zipper, just remember there's multiple ways. So don't get caught up thinking, well, this is how David did it, so you know this is the only way to do it. No, there's multiple ways to do it. So open up your mind and learn a new way. So what I'm going to start out with is, for the fly front zipper, well, we already did some pre-stitching, obviously. I've got the right side of my fly, and that's going to go to the left. So right here, just to orient you, I've got the waistband facing me right here. So this is up towards me. And I've got the right side of my fabric for the fly facing, and here is the left side of my pant or skirt or whatever you're doing. So this is going to be the left side. So I'm going to put it right sides together. So this is the right side. Right sides together. And I have 1/2 inch seam allowances on here. So I'm going to sew 1/2 inch seam allowance from the bottom all the way to the top. Now you might have wondered, well, gosh, David, why didn't you finish this edge right here, but you did finish this edge? Well, this edge continues on down to the rest of the crotch. This edge gets hidden inside because it's going to fold back like this. So it's going to fold back. If you want to do top stitching, then don't do this step. If you want to do top stitching, you would fold it back and you'd top stitch it all together. I'm trying to decide if I want to do, I don't want to do top stitching on this. I'm going to add understitch instead. So right here is where I'm going to understitch. So right there is a moment where you can decide to do something different. So I'm going to understitch. Going back from here, I might actually look back and say, man, I wish I'd top stitched, but whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. Remember, I would have interfaced this piece. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to get my zipper. So this zipper is too long. I frequently have zippers that are too long, and that's just normal because we can always shorten them. And you have to decide right now if you are interested in keeping the metal part down here, if you've got a longer zipper, or if you'd rather just chop it off. I think I'd like to keep it. So I just need to make sure that it stays out of where I'm going to do my top stitching around this curve. So I just need to make sure that my first row of top stitching will be right here, 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And then my second row of top stitching, if I want it, would be like another 1/4 of an inch in. So if I'm going to do the second row of top stitching, which I probably will, I need to make sure that the metal tab here stays out of there. The other thing I need to make sure is that my zipper teeth, so they're going to be facing down as I sew them on. I need to make sure that my zipper teeth, I've got 3/8 of an inch tape here. So oftentimes you'll have 1/2 inch tape there. You just need to know what that distance is so that you can place it so this zipper tooth, when it gets laid down here, is 1/4 of an inch away from my seam line. So in that case, my zipper is going to sit right there. That's nice. It actually lined up perfectly. And these dimensions will always vary, so you just have to understand the concept. So I'm not going to be like, it will always be this. It won't always be that. I can't promise you your zipper teeth will always be the same distance away from the edge. I can't promise you that your fly facing will be the exact same dimension. It will always be different, depending on whose pattern you're working with. So get used to it changing up. But when I pull this back, I want those zipper teeth to be at least 1/4 of an inch away from that. So mine might be a little bit further than that, but it'll be fine. I do want to use a different foot row. I want to use my zipper foot. And I'm going to stitch it down on the right side of the zipper here. And you can just do a single row of stitching there, but if you're doing something like denim, you probably want to have 2 rows. So you can get a little bit closer to the zipper itself or a little bit farther out here, just so long as you've got 2 rows of stitching. That'd be great. Now, I'm just gonna say this now. I am going to shorten the zipper up here, but I will not cut this zipper off until I have sewed it into my waistband. Never cut your zipper until you have secured it in some other way. Otherwise, you are guaranteed to get rid of the zip, like the pull will just fall, like pull off. So don't cut your zipper. Once that's in place, I can do some top stitching. Now, I'm actually going to press this really quick. I'm going to run over to the iron and I'll press this and then I'll be right back. You don't need to see me press this. Mostly I'm just pressing that seam line flat, just right here. Now, the next part that I've pressed it, the next thing that I'm going to do is get these 2 rows of top stitching on here. But I'm not going to do it from the front. I'm actually going to do it from the back. Some people like to always do it from the front. I find it easier to do from the back. Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? Well, some people will tell you this is wrong. Some people will tell you that this is right. You will hear different schools of thought on this all the time. So don't worry about it too much. I'm just going to trim off the end of the right one that I've stitched down. But notice I folded up the other end of the zipper and pinned it in place so that it's out of the way, so that I can come in here without stitching it down. And it's important that this is loose for later because this needs to get sewn to the other side. I'm gonna just sew in, and I'm sewing along, and this, I'm sewing along the edge 1/4 inch away from the edge of my fly facing. Now this is important. Why it's important that this, that you're, when you serged your fly facing, that you were precise. And this is why, because if you screwed that up, this will get screwed up. And if you have to unpick this multiple times, that's fine. That frequently happens. But from the right side of the fabric, it should look like that. Nice and smooth. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew, after I clean up my threads, I'm going to sew the second row of stitching 1/4 inch away from that one. Oh, my machine just did something interesting. Hopefully I don't have to unpick that. Oh yeah, it snagged a whole bunch of thread from underneath. That happens to you, you can either unpick it, or if you're lucky, like I was just lucky, you can pull it out. But I'm going to have to unpick it. So I will unpick this and come back. All right, I unpicked it and restitched this portion. And on the underside, it's going to look like that. Once that is done, I can unpin this portion, and this side is completely finished. And it's ready for me to attach to the other side. Now, this needs to overlap my zipper over here by 1/4 inch. I've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance on here. Well, I've got a full 1/2 inch seam allowance. So it's gonna go, I'm only gonna fold it underneath 1/4 inch though, because I'm gonna stick it in I'll stick it underneath 1/4 of an inch, which will take up 1/4 of an inch of my seam allowance, but I'm also folding it underneath 1/4 of an inch, which means that between sticking it underneath 1/4 of an inch and the 1/4 of an inch that's been folded under, I have taken up my full 1/2 inch. I hope that made sense. In any case, what you're going to do is stick it underneath from this edge of the zipper that I have here, because it lines up with the edge here, or wherever you happen to have the edge of the zipper. If the edge of the zipper is sticking out here, measure in from the edge of your fabric 1/4 of an inch, and that's where you need to sew next. So for me, I'm lucky enough that I can line this up at the top and sew exactly at 1/4 of an inch, from the top of the zipper all the way down to the bottom of the zipper, which happens to be, for me, the side of my serge. So when I fold it back, fold that over it, when I peek underneath, it overlaps by 1/4 of an inch. Once that's done, I also have my fly, where'd it go? Here it is. I also have my fly guard. And the fly guard sits on the inside like this. It overlaps over the top of all of the construction here so that we don't accidentally get our underwear stuck inside our zipper, or other things stuck inside of our zipper. Anyhow, once that lines up, we're also going to sew from the base of the zipper up to the top. And I'm not actually going to catch the bottom part. So you'll notice there's a bunch hanging off down here at the base. That's normal. What I'm going to do is stitch basically right from the base of the zipper again. I could have done this before at the same time, so if you feel like you want to do this part as well as these past two seams, you can all do together and just sandwich the zipper in it. But if you don't want to do that, you can do this instead. But I'm starting at the base of the zipper and sewing to the top again, so that when I hold this open and I unzip, you see the fly guard right underneath that zipper. Now I need to do some edge stitching. So from the base of the zipper up to the top, with the fly guard coming as your base over here, it's still coming off to the left, and everything else going off to the right, I'm going to sew a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge, from the base all the way up to the top. And that's going to hold everything down. Trim off all my excess thread. Now you might wonder, well gosh, how are we going to sew the rest of the crotch seam? Well, as far as the zipper is concerned, it's actually all done. The zipper is in place. It's sewn. We just have to get all of this to stay put. So when I'm constructing a pair of pants or a skirt or something, I would have sewn down here the seam line up till about here, up till about 2 inches away from all of this going on. I would have sewn the base seam up until this point. This particular seam method of doing a fly front zipper requires some top stitching through the crotch, which if you're doing a pair of denim, like jeans or something like that, this is great for that, because then I can fold all of this back do a top stitch, and onto my previous seam line down here, and it finishes it all together, and I'm good. So this is actually the method I personally prefer to use. I think it's the easiest, but there's another method that I would have done the seam line up until this point, and I would have had to finagle a lot more pieces of fabric around each other, whereas this, I can pull everything I don't want to use or accidentally catch out of the way while I'm sewing. So this next seam that I'm going to do to finish this bottom part off so it's not floating open like this is from the inside. I'm going to make sure that, if you'll notice, this seam allowance is going off towards the same direction as the zipper, and the zipper facing, and the direction the fly guard is facing. I want this one down here to also face that direction. So I'm going to line this up. And it won't be pressed open, it'll all be pressed off to my right. And at one point you'll notice that the seam line is going to have to sort of pivot. It kind of twists right there. That's normal. It twists from facing over here to facing the other direction. And all of that gets hidden with my fly guard. And the fly guard, I'm just going to have it go straight down. And this edge of the fly guard will line up with where I'm going to top stitch on the other side. So that's why we haven't stitched it down yet. Like earlier, instead of going from the base of the fly guard, we went from the base of the zipper. This is why we do that, so that I can hide all of that construction underneath the fly guard. So once that's all sort of pinned in place, I can flip it over, and I can start up a little bit higher if I want to. I don't have to start right at the top of these two stitches here. I can come up a little bit higher. Frequently you see that with denim. And I think I will, because I want to be able to enclose the bottom of the zipper a little bit more. So give yourself a good back stitch, and you could come back and bar tack that later. If you have a zigzag machine, you can do that. Just be careful as you sew over the top of your pins. So it snagged the bottom of my fly guard. And when I open this up, the zipper can go down all the way. And when I peek in here, that metal piece at the bottom of the zipper is hidden underneath. The zipper is done. So if you do want to do another detail or something, you could always do another line of stitching 1/4 of an inch this direction if you want. I'm not gonna judge you on that or not. You could do some top stitch. And it'd look great. The other thing that you need to do as well is, currently when we open this up, or we actually just look on the inside, the fly guard is flapping about. So this could accidentally get caught back out of the way, which would be annoying because we don't want it to get caught back out of the way. We want it to be able to, I just ran out of bobbin, so I'm changing my bobbin as we speak. So we want to find a way to tack the fly guard down. Now, if you look at your jeans, they frequently do a bunch of bar tacks and other stitches right here so that you can just peg it from the surface. However, there is a way to make it so that you don't have to have any bar tacks over there on the surface, and you can still finish it. So I could just go like this and do a quick zoop, 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 and it would hold the fly guard down. Or what I can do is if I lift back this edge, I can see the edge of my fly facing as well as the fly guard all right here. So all I need to do is very carefully just tack it down right there instead. And the fly guard isn't going to flop about. It's going to stay closed. Fly guards are nice as well just because they do a really good job of hiding all of the construction that we did just barely. And so then when we open up the surface of the zipper, there's the fly guard and it's held in place down there and everything looks grand. So that is how you sew a fly front zipper.